As Charles Leclerc and Ferrari triumphed over the dominant McLarens in Monza today, the only thing louder than the cheering of the Tifosi was the incompetence of McLaren. Welcome to Fiends, where the F1 never ends, just like the obstacles to Lando getting a championship. First lap Lando once again lost a race in the first lap, this time thanks to a bold overtake from his teammate Oscar Piastri. It didn't matter though, because apparently we live in Bizarro World, where Ferrari's strategists can pull off a victory even when they don't have the fastest car. Leclerc is once again riding high. After having previously won his own home race in Monaco, he's now won his team's home race in Italy. This time thanks to pulling off a difficult one-stop strategy that kept him ahead of the dominant McLarens. When asked how it felt, Leclerc lit a cigarette, rolled over, and fell asleep. After the race, Zak Brown said, "We have two number one drivers," which was his way of saying, Lando may be in the lead right now, but we know Oscar's going to be better than him in the future, so we're not going to do anything to piss him off, even if it costs Lando the championship. Or, in other words, they've adopted the 2018 Red Bull strategy of favoring the young star they see as the team's future, even if it costs them the old guy that used to be their golden boy. McLaren made it clear today that they're willing to give up a 2024 Lando Norris WDC for a 2025 Piastri championship. And while there was nothing unfair about Oscar's overtake, if McLaren was at all serious about helping Lando get a driver's championship this year, they would have made sure that everyone, including their other driver, was doing everything possible to help him catch Max. Which, given the pace of their car, would be possible if the team was willing to make that happen. But obviously, they're fine with just a Constructors' Championship, which is all but guaranteed at this point. They're getting complacent, and it shows. Now, we could get into all of the reasons why McLaren isn't insisting that Piastri play the role of Barrichello for the rest of this season, but I think it's pretty clear. The team knows that they have the Constructors' Championship in the bag and doesn't want to risk losing the ever-increasing talent that is the young Australian, because they know their MVP isn't going anywhere. And no, I'm not referring to Lando Norris. I'm talking about the number one contributor to McLaren's inevitable Constructors' Championship, Sergio Perez. Checo keeping his seat has basically guaranteed McLaren's victory in the WCC. And while he finished only 2 spots behind Max in this race, you don't get praise for doing what's expected of you, especially when you regularly fail to meet expectations. Checo also called the car a boat, given its propensity for understeer, while Max referred to it as the reason why he was willing to bury the hatchet with Toto. Key players at Red Bull have insisted that the RB20 is not actually bad. It's still faster than the RB19, but rather their performance deficit is due to other teams improving their cars. Most pundits seem to be attributing this to the loss of Adrian Newey and Rob Marshall, but it feels like everyone is forgetting about the wind tunnel time penalty that Red Bull took. And this roadmap released by Christian Horner all but confirms it. Sure, Max Verstappen was only able to take 6th place in Monza, but Red Bull is far from the biggest drop in form on the grid. Aston Martin went from being the second fastest car on the regular to consistently finishing outside the points. And on that note, before we go to the poll of the week, the Canadian Positivity Guy is here to offer his opinion on the subject. Alex Albon started the race in 9th and finished 9th. Fernando Alonso started in 11th and finished 11th. These are solid examples of great drivers getting the most out of their mediocre cars. So can someone please explain to me how 7-year Formula 1 veteran Lance Stroll started in 17th and finished in 18th, whilst newbie driver who has literally never been in a Formula 1 race, Franco Colapinto, started behind Stroll and finished 6 places ahead of him? Honestly, it feels a lot like when I broke up with your mom after 7 years, only to find out that literally anyone was a better lay. And now back to our regularly scheduled programming. This week, for the poll of the week, I asked, who's going to win the WDC in 2024? And more than 80% of respondents said Max Verstappen, while the remaining few votes went to Lando Norris. Which is hilarious given how McLaren's car is so much better than Red Bull right now, and demonstrates just how unwilling McLaren is when it comes to throwing their weight behind Lando Norris. Will Buxton made a very impassioned rant about it that's been making its way around the internet. And if you're British, you probably agreed with him. But for those of us outside the UK, we see it a little differently. Buxton had to imply that Piastri must have a number one driver clause in his contract, and that Lando's mistakes came down to driving angry. But if that was Sainz who got passed by Chuck on the first lap and then made a bunch of errors, they'd say, well, you have to be level-headed if you want to win the WDC. The moral of the story here is find someone who looks after you the way the British media looks after any British driver. And now, it's back. That little thing I hide at the end of the video. the spicy joke of the week. Lando Norris was asked how he feels after the race, to which he responded, "You know when you put in a ton of effort on the toilet only to squeeze out a tiny little nugget, and you're left wondering how you put in so much work for so little in return?" Which is ironic. Given how hard his team fucked him, you'd think the turds would just fall right out of him. And if you enjoy laughing about F1, why don't you check out this video where I take a look at the dumpster fire that was Logan Sargent's career. See you there.